So when we ordain as a novice, novice monastic, we receive robes and a bowl. We have to have robes and a bowl in order to receive the ordination, among other things. But it gives us a clue of how important this bowl is to our monastic life. Of the 348 precepts that a fully ordained nun has, 38 of them relate to food. That is over 10%. It's impressive. And it's not the major ones. You know, we're not going to lose our ordination over food infractions unless we decide to kill to eat, which we're not going to do, right? But there are many, many minor ones about how we procure food, then how we eat, and what's the proper way to do it, and so forth. Of course, I think probably everyone who's been involved with the Abbey, and certainly the monastics here, know that in the Buddhist time, monastics went on alms round every day, once a day, to simply accept into their bowl whatever was given. And that was the way the monastics lived. As the Dharma has spread and monastic communities have spread to different climates and different cultures and so forth, that actual practice has had to be adapted. But the basic principle is still the same. As Master Wu Yin talks about these precepts and choosing simplicity, she says, however, two principles underlie the precepts regarding food. To abandon attachment to tasty and plentiful food that suits our individual preferences, and to abandon ways of procuring food that are unkind or inconvenient for the lay people. So it's about cutting our attachment and also about our dependence on the kindness of others, but also with deep respect for the kindness by which we receive the food. So that's the way that Abbey has been set up from the beginning. And as Venerable Children often says, you know, people thought she was nuts when she said we were going to live only by the food that was offered to others. Not that she was nuts, that she would simply starve. And that hasn't happened. So it's, I don't know, I've been thinking about this quite a lot lately because one of the things I miss most about having guests at the Abbey is the way in which we interact with the food offerings. How kindly people bring whatever they bring, and we incorporate whatever they offer into the Abbey's meals and so forth, and we have our beautiful exchange of the offering and the receiving that reminds me, oh, I'm a recipient of the kindness of others. And so it's helpful to refresh my mind about that. So I've been thinking about it kind of a lot. I remember the Taiwanese nuns, as you know, were very, very helpful in getting us started and coming for ordinations and so forth. And one nun in particular, old school training, another Taiwanese nun told me, she said, I can't do that. This nun, when she goes to fill her bowl, she puts in her soup, she puts in her rice, she puts in her main dish, she puts in her salad, she puts in her dessert. One bowl. That is a level of renunciation around food that I admire and haven't worked very hard to try to attain. But it's a great example for us about simply taking what comes. And you get very used to, over the years, eating everything out of one bowl. I mean, it's quite nice, actually. It's a way better way than trying to pick this and this and this and this and this. So I have to say, personally, I have created a lot of negative karma in the Abbey kitchen over the years. Much, much, much. Because when I came here, I brought all my lay life stuff about food. And I like food. And I spent many years cultivating a very fine taste about food. And ideas about what goes with what. And when you can eat this and when you eat this, and what you would never mix in the same meal. Like if you were going to have Asian food, would you actually also serve chili? Probably not. But you do if you come here. Where I came from, and the way I was raised, and the way I learned to cultivate my sense of food, there were certain rules and guidelines in my mind, about how you're supposed to eat. and what goes with what. And as our dear friend Zopa, with whom I fought many battles in the kitchen, and we were kitchen managers at different times, and we've learned to, we of course love each other very much. But as Zopa pointed out, she said, you know, when somebody comes into the kitchen, she doesn't come in by herself. Her mother comes in, her grandmother comes in, her great-grandmother comes in, and then if you have two cooks in the kitchen with both your mothers and all your grandmothers and all your great-grandmothers, honey, we're ready to fight if your grandmothers have really different perspectives on food. I will say the turning point came for me. There were two major turning points around food that I can recall. One was I love cheese. I still love cheese. And I spent many years living in Seattle, like very well known for its Epicurean qualities, right? And so someone had offered us a Stilton cheese. Now, I'm not advertising or advocating for this. I'm not even sure I would now eat it. But at the time, I was really excited. Oh, wow, there's a block of Stilton in that refrigerator. It's a very fine English cheese, has a very distinctive flavor. And I was going to cook in a few days, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with that cheese. And I came in for lunch one day. The kitchen was still over there, tiny little space. So I came in one day, and we were having chili. And sure enough, somebody had grated up that Stilton to put on the chili. And I thought, let it go. Let it go. It was a big turning point between my idea of what I thought should be done with that cheese and just to try to accept the offering. Another turning point was around cultivating basil. Kevin and I shared the garden, working in the garden for many years, and I was really clear about when exactly those basil leaves should be picked in order to make the perfect pesto. And by golly, Kevin came and just took the whole crop in a single whack. I mean, took them all off. They weren't even going to reproduce. I was so furious. I mean, I was livid. And before I opened my mouth, I said, I was a Chinny by then, Chinny, are you going to go to hell over a handful of leaves? Okay, not worth it. Not worth it. But I have spent my time working with, and every time we have a new cook or several new cooks who are like really into their food, now it's getting easier and easier and easier. But it took me a long time to get over my ideas about what should be done, how it should be done, how to think about it. How many hours can you spend on that cushion planning your menu? Count the sessions. If it's a 2-session menu, drop it. So those are the kind of guidelines I've come to think about. I was kind of horrified today when I went looking for this in our library. We have only one copy. This book, The Compassionate Kitchen by Venerable Thupten Chodron, which describes how the Abbey works and deals with food, should be on every shelf. Every guest library shelf, the libraries in Gotami House, and also here. I think it should be required reading for all of us. Because what she's doing here is laying out what our prayers mean and how to think about it as we go along. One of the things that I remember also very vividly from the early days when the kitchen was over there and Venerable was the only monastic was how often she had to say, we are renunciates. This is not a resort. Many times I heard, this is not a resort. And so we had to lay some guidelines down. Breakfast, 1 hot dish, a breakfast grain or leftovers, period. Lunch, 1 hot dish, 1 grain, a protein, a vegetable or 2, a salad, maybe dessert once in a while, period. Medicine meal, leftovers, period. If we had a retreat, we could have soup and bread, period. Well, that's changed. And partly reasonably so. Now we have we have all kinds of food, food, dietary restrictions, yes. And they're legitimate. You know, people have allergic reactions to things, people can't digest certain things, and so we're accommodating different needs for the community. But that underlying thought about simplicity, and we are renunciates, is still the guideline that we need to work with. And also how we use the food, remembering again and again that we are the recipients of the kindness of others. And that's the part I miss the most about not having guests here. We still don't buy our own food. Many people have made offerings to the food fund of Sravasti Abbey, and our local volunteers go out and shop every week to make sure that we have what we need. And our friends in Singapore also are now providing tremendous amounts of food. We are well cared for. But it's a little bit harder to remember that when we don't see people coming in with their brown paper bags and we're not standing here doing the food offering exchange. So it's important to keep this in mind. We are very careful to eat everything, to use the resources well. Sometimes the leftovers don't get used. And when I see them go into the compost bin, I think, whose meal was that? Whose offering was that? And then, recently when I was doing the thing for the Buddhist Global Relief and realized that more people are dying every minute from hunger and hunger-related issues than are dying of COVID, it just made it all the more poignant about how well we are cared for and how fortunate we are. Why? Because people have faith in the Dharma and people have faith in our practice. And, how do we repay that kindness? Well, the ordination text where we receive our bowl tells us, transmigrating in the three worlds, one is not able to give up attachment. Give up attachment and enter nirvana. That's the true way to repay kindness. And that's our mission here. That's what everyone here is committed to. And that's what all our guests who are here, with whom we share the food that is offered, and we share it freely, the food that's been offered to the Sangha. People come here because they're attracted to this. They're attracted to this practice of giving up attachment and entering nirvana. And that's the true way that we repay the kindness for those that are making sure that we are fed. So that's all I really want to say. Read this book. It's so helpful. I have to read it every once in a while and remember. And then the very first thing that we're going to recite here in a minute, I contemplate all the causes and conditions and the kindness of others by which I receive this food. If I have that in mind every time I go to the snack counter and get a little irritated because the salty thing I like so much is not there anymore, then I will be happy to eat the thing next to it. But I have to remind myself. I have to remind it because we're so well cared for, actually. If we were really hungry, it would be a different thing. So really, that's all I wanted to share. It's how precious this is, how precious that is, how precious this is. It's getting kind of beat up, actually. And now that I've brought it back to memory, I may do some aspiration. Oh, our venerable teacher doesn't add condiments to her food. That's part of her practice. I call that an austerity. So there are different ways we can work to work with the attachment of food. It's so hard to break. But I know that we're all working together towards that goal. And soon, hopefully soon, we'll have guests returning again. And we can really visually and kind of viscerally do that exchange. And while I'm doing this, I want to thank everyone online who makes sure that the Sangha is fed, because your generosity is overwhelming and we are inspired by your faith in the three jewels. Thank you.